coexist with contemporary scientific advancements. This is a mouthful, oh my gosh. By illuminating the paucity of scholarly work that connects these two domains, Willis emphasizes the distinctive opportunity to investigate how science fiction not only mirrors but also actively influences the scientific discourse of his time. He asserts that a comprehensive analysis of science fiction texts from E.D.A. Hoffman's The Sandman to H.G. Wells' The Island of Dr. Moreau reveals the complex interplay between literary creativity and scientific progress, thereby challenging the prevailing notion that literature and science function in isolation. Literature and science function in isolation. Through this analytical framework, Willis posits that the dynamic exchange of ideas between these disciplines merits rigorous examination, as it sheds light on the ways in which cultural narratives surrounding science were constructed and disseminated during a transformative era. In illuminating the scarcity of scholarly work that connects science fiction with the scientific discourse of the 19th century, Martin Willis underscores the unique opportunity to examine how science fiction not only mirrors, but actively shapes scientific narratives. He contends that the genre is as intellectually complex, as socially significant, as historically revealing as any other form of fiction in the 19th century produced. Yet it remained largely overlooked in critical discussions. By adopting methodologies from broader literary analyses, he aims to elevate science fiction to a comparable status with genres that have received more scholarly attention, such as Gothic and sensation fiction. Sensation fiction sounds wild, by the way. Willis also addresses the intricate conflicts within 19th century science between natural and preternatural knowledge, amateur and professor. I have a speech impediment, if you could tell. Amateur and professional practices, and orthodox and heterodox disciplines, arguing that these tensions create a rich context for understanding the genres. He asserts that it is overly simplistic to suggest that late 19th century science fiction merely reflects the supremacy of professional science. Rather, it engages with and critiques these very dynamics, offering insights into the multifaceted nature of scientific culture. Thus, Willis's argument reveals the potential of science fiction to influence and interrogate the prevailing scientific ideologies of its time, urging scholars to reconsider its significance within the broader cultural narrative. He asserts that a comprehensive analysis of science fiction texts from E.D.A. Hoffman's The Sandman to H.G. Wells' The Island of Dr. Moreau reveals the complex interplay between literary creativity and scientific progress, thereby challenging the prevailing notion that literature and science function in isolation. For instance, Hoffman's work, particularly The Sandman, intricately weaves together themes of mesmerism, magic, and the early materialist sciences. Sorry, that's a really nice alliteration there. Themes of mesmerism, magic, and the early materialist sciences. Yet it remains underexamined in terms of its contributions to the history of science. Despite Maria Tartar's acknowledgement of mesmerism in Hoffman's narratives, the broader implications connecting these themes to materialist science are often overlooked. This oversight is emblematic of a critical trend that privileges psychoanalytic interpretations over historical ones, leading to a reductive understanding of the text. Conversely, H.G. East folk echoes broader concerns about human evolution and de-evolution. Such readings, while insightful, tend to focus narrowly on specific themes, neglecting the richer context in which these narratives emerge. Thus, both Hoffman and Wells exemplify the intricate dialogue between literature and science, illustrating that these genres are not merely reflections of scientific ideas, but actively engage with and shape them, reinforcing Willis's argument for the necessity of an interdisciplinary approach to understanding their significance in the cultural landscapes of the 19th century. In Mesmerists, Monsters, and Machines, Willis compellingly argues for the necessity of interdisciplinary scholarship, understanding 19th century science fiction as a vital contributor to contemporary scientific discourse. By drawing attention to the scholarly engagement connecting these two fields, he identifies a significant opportunity to explore how science fiction not only reflects scientific ideas but actively shapes them. All of this, all of the quotations, I didn't show you where they are quotes, but it's just all my bibliography just says Mesmers, Monsters, Machines. I'm not gonna read that to you because that's kind of boring. I hope you can't hear my little mouse. You probably can. It's very, very loud. Okay. Alrighty. This next one I did in September of 2024. I guess I was just writing essays while I think this is just a group of different essays I did for the same professor in September of 2024. So do with that what you will. Some of them might be lower quality because I was sleepy, but hopefully that makes you sleepy too. This next one is mythologies within categories. This one's gonna be boring. Okay. Reference books are handy academic tools that encompass a broad range of formats. Dictionaries, encyclopedias, almanacs, atlases, and handbooks, each serving a distinct purpose. The Hutchinson Dictionary of World Mythology is a self-introduced reference book, being a definition argument, as it is a compilation of formal definitions by species, area, and culture via a long series of alphabetical entries by location, for the purpose of briefly explaining what a creature is and where it came from, all in a comprehensive and easily digestible list. See, sometimes I get ahead of myself when I'm reading, and I just mash one word together with a word that's maybe 3 words away. I don't know why. I think my reading style is quite fast outside of verbal reading because I want you to maybe understand what I'm saying. But when I'm reading it in my head, I, for the most part, just read the first half of a word and then go to the next couple and do the same thing. I find it to be much faster. I do sometimes have to reread for comprehension though. It's just how I learned. Okay, next paragraph. Definitively, Helicon Publishing gave the Hutchinson Dictionary of World Mythology an accurate title. The defining feature of reference books is their utility in answering specific queries and supporting the research process by providing verified and contextually relevant information. As such, the compilation of formal definitions with the degree of more classic dictionaries fits snugly and comfortably in the definition category because it is organized as such. Consider the entry on the less than famed but culturally relevant Ekyrion detailing the English River of Woe as it partially flows underground, believed to be one of the 5 rivers linking this world to the underworld and realm of the dead. The purpose of the passage is to inform any readers of the name of this mythic Ekyrion, the context of why it is mythical. It links our living world to that of the dead and the culture it belongs to, the English. Unlike comprehensive academic texts, paragraphs that present a detailed narrative on a particular subject. The reference books are characterized by their focused approach to delivering precise and accessible information. They serve as essential tools in academic research, professional practice, and general knowledge acquisition. The Hutchinson Dictionary of World Mythology is precisely presented as such, resonating with anyone's understanding of what a formal definition is, no matter their level of education. While the dictionary provides detailed entries, such as one on Acheron, it is limited by its format and its scope. First, the definitions are constrained by the necessity for brevity and accessibility, which may result in an oversimplification of complex mythological concepts. For example, the entry on how Acheron succinctly describes its mythological significance and historical context, but does not delve deeply into variations in interpretation across distinct cultures or historical periods. Additionally, the dictionary's content is influenced by the selection and editorial decisions made by its contributors, which can introduce biases or limit the representation of diverse scholarly perspectives. Thus, while the Hutchinson Dictionary offers valuable insights, it does not encompass the full breadth of scholarly discourse or the nuanced interpretations of mythological terms. Consequently, it functions as a useful reference rather than exhaustive definition argument, providing a starting point for understanding rather than a comprehensive analysis. The entry from the Hutchinson Dictionary of World Mythology on Lilith, describing her as a demonic first wife of Adam in Hebrew mythology and suggesting a link to the Mesopotamian goddess Ninlil. I actually don't know how to pronounce that. Illustrates how the dictionary aims to provide clear and concise definitions. By positioning Lilith with a specific mythological context and hinting at her possible origins, the dictionary offers a foundational understanding rather than an in-depth exploration. This approach reflects the dictionary's purpose to deliver accessible definitions that summarize complex figures and concepts. While the brief nature of the entry, I keep wanting to say entree for some reason, I must be hungry, efficiently conveys essential information, it also means that the dictionary does not delve into the nuances or varied interpretations of Lilith across diverse sources and historical periods. Thus, the dictionary serves its role by offering essential definitions while acknowledging its limits in providing comprehensive scholarly analysis. The scope of the dictionary is deliberately focused on summarizing and clarifying key concepts within mythology. It aims to cover a broad range of topics, but does not. It aims to cover a broad range of topics, but does so by providing concise explanations rather than in-depth analyses. This scope ensures that users obtain a general understanding of a wide array of mythological figures and concepts without delving extensive scholarly details. Overall, the Hutchinson Dictionary of World Mythology is indeed titled for its very purpose, to define phrases. Breaking down the word dictionary is perhaps a fine defense of the nature of Elegant Publishing's brainchild. From Latin dictionarium, a dictionary is best defined as a collection of word or phrases, which is broad but on the nose. Okay. This was, I think, just like an analysis of what a dictionary has is the ability to be, which is just a dictionary. Surprise, surprise. Okay. We're gonna go on to the next one. Okay, we're getting out of literature and moving into ethics, but only briefly. So this was like a questionnaire essay, so it's gonna be very wordy, and I am so sorry that you have to listen to this, but you're doing this by choice, so I'm not sorry anymore. Okay. So we're just gonna dive in. This one doesn't have like a good title. It just says like definitive ethics. Okay. Paragraph number 1. To think is to consider a subject or the idea of a subject in relation to solving a problem. Reasoning is applied thinking, usually done systematically in the brain. Reasoning is often holistic and investigative in order to come to a conclusion. Practically knowing the difference between thinking and reasoning can be vital in some interpersonal interactions as well as subjective interactions. In order to rhetorically break down a situation, one must find where the situation starts and where it moves. It starts in thinking, it moves into reasoning. In philosophical reasoning, a statement is an assertion that something is or is not the case. The statement must be true or false. Statements encompass the isness of a subject with an assertion of a fact as if were fundamentally true. An argument is a group of statements in which one is supposed to be supported by the rest. Arguments based on empirical and trustworthy data. Empirical and trustworthy data prove a point, most often a point of view reflective of the world. Utilizing the differences between a statement and an argument can allow a speaker or writer or thinker to again break down their piece, being either a statement or argument, to its fundamentals, allowing room to either testify the inability to break down their work further or expand upon their work exponentially. Generally, an argument is a means to a conclusion. A good argument is supposed to show its conclusion is worthy of belief or of interpretation. A bad argument fails to show the conclusion can prove anything. Good arguments are valid and come with conclusive support on the grounds of having their premises being true. Bad arguments lack conclusive support and are invalid. The conclusion is not looked at as true. Moral arguments exist to propagate understanding. They exist to move ethical thinking and discourse along. What moral arguments do not do is create fact out of a held argument. This poses a couple questions. The first one being, is it immoral to believe a claim without evidence? Why or why not? Even if your beliefs are true, believing any moral argument without information, while not necessarily morally wrong, can sometimes be ethically wrong. Belief without evidence is faith, which is different than morality. Having faith in an argument without evidence is like having faith in the disproven idea that the earth is flat. If one comes to a conclusion based on faulty evidence, one can never be sure again if they can come to the right conclusion of an argument or their own beliefs or a situation. The process of coming to conclusions often outweighs the conclusion itself, and if the means means of coming to one's conclusion is based not on fact. One has denied themselves the ability to create the right mindset to conclude a fact. It is not impeding anyone else's beliefs but their own instead. This secondary question posed is, what is the difference between persuading someone to believe a claim and giving them reasons to accept it? Can a good argument be persuasive? Providing reasons for accepting a claim means providing information, evidence, or arguments to support the claim. To persuade someone to accept a proposition is to convince them that the proposition is true. The difference is that once someone is convinced, they can accept the claim. Giving reasons for accepting the complaint cannot result in good persuasion, as it still may be rejected. The job of a persuasive speaker or writer is to use persuasive techniques such as rhetoric and logic to allow the listener or readers to accept the claim as stated. A good argument can be persuasive because it is a logical explanation of why the conclusion is correct. A good argument has a clear structure and uses valid reasoning to support its claim and draw conclusions. It often uses examples and analogies to make the argument more persuasive and clear. In short, a good argument is one that clearly presents the evidence and logic and supports the conclusion. Alright. Do you think that morality ultimately depends on God, that God is the author of moral law? Why or why not? While I personally and a person under the faith of Christianity, I do not believe that morality depends on God. Morality is defined as a set of ethical principles and values that are the basis of human relationships and social interactions, and therefore developed under human construction. Different cultures and societies have different moral codes and values, which are not necessarily based on a belief in any or one God. Rather, morality is a reflection on the human values of empathy, compassion, respect for others, and other ethical principles. While it is... I think my fan just turned on. If you can hear that, I am so sorry. Actually, give me just a moment. Sorry, I just turned on the fan. I hope that sounds better for you guys. Okay. It is possible to have a system of ethics and values without relying on a belief in God. The presence of God has influence on the human definition of morality, but that is more under the realm of divine command theory. Okay. The next question posed is that what is the logic behind the principle of universability? The principle of universability states that any action or principle should be considered right if everyone in the world could act in the same way without leading to bad consequences for anyone. This principle has entered into moral deliberations over racism. Many people have been raised to believe that race holds power over people or people of color. People have grown to discard this belief regardless of the circumstance, because if everyone in the world held their race as the gold standard with no consequences, racial discrimination and violence would be even worse than it is today. How does racial discrimination violate the principle of impartiality? Racial discrimination violates the principle of impartiality in two distinct ways. Firstly, it separates people on the bias of race, which is the opposite of impartiality. Impartiality means treating all people equally, and racial discrimination, in fact, does not. Oh, shoot. I will edit that out, I promise. Okay. Alright. Okay, secondly, racial discrimination also leads to unfair treatment, which means treating people differently and not equally. This means that racial discrimination breaks the principle of impartiality into aspects, separation, and unequal treatment. essay because that one was actually incomplete and I can't find the original full document, which is super sad. Okay. This one is, I was really on like a monsters kick. I was really into like folklore at the time. I don't really believe in a lot of folklore, but I find it incredibly interesting how cultures develop folklore. Super cool. So I need to like cough. This one is called Monsters, Mythos, or the Realities of Mankind. Let's begin. The issue identified in David G. Gilmour's Monsters and Mythos revolves around the psychological and cultural significance of monsters as manifestations of human aggression and fear. Gilmour argues that the ubiquity of monsters figures across cultures points to a deep-seated psychological need to confront and understand inherent violent impulses. Gilmour illustrates that the most significant consequence of the universal presence of monsters in human culture is their role as a coping mechanism for confronting inherent aggression and fear. By externalizing violent impulses through monsters figures, societies not only navigate their anxieties but also reinforce moral lessons that guide social behavior, ultimately revealing the profound connection between human psychology and cultural expression. Gilmour connects monsters to Freud. Sorry, I never really figured out how to pronounce that man's name. Gilmour connects monsters to Freud's concept of the aggressive instinct, suggesting that these figures emerge from the collective human psyche as a way to externalize and process violence and fear. The diverse representations of monsters in folklore and art indicate how different societies express shared anxieties and moral lessons, revealing underlying social issues. As a coping mechanism, monsters serve as a means for individuals and their making up of societies en masse to confront and negotiate their fears, providing a cathartic outlet for aggression and social anxieties. Morally, however, Gilmour affixes the lessons of monsters holding a narrative around reflection. Gilmour notes that the world was and still is full of awful monsters, and their presence in popular culture often leads to a lack of reflection on their deeper psychological significance. The characteristics shared by these mythical beings, from monsters, reptiles to man-eating ogres, suggest that they do not only represent external threats, but also reflect internal fears and moral dilemmas. These monsters often embody behaviors and traits that societies wish to confront or control, serving as cautionary symbols that guide ethical behavior. Furthermore, Gilmour highlights that in various cultures, such as in Far Eastern legends, the confrontation with monstrous beings often symbolizes existential battles that societies must face. For instance, many legends center on the depredations of fire-belching demons that local warriors must confront, or else society will be destroyed. This narrative framework reinforces the ideas that monsters are not merely the figments of imagination. They encapsulate real societal fears and moral challenges, prompting reflection on the nature of good and evil broadly and the consequences of action. Ultimately, narratives surrounding monsters compel individuals and their civilization to engage in contemplation, making clear the moral lesson they impart are as significant as the fears they invoke. This dual role of monsters as embodiments of fear and as catalysts of moral introspection underscores their enduring significance in human nature. analyze the relationship between the factor of common features in monster lore and the event of humanity's needs to create fearful visions, we can apply the criteria of correlation. Gilmore emphasizes that a comparative study of monsters should integrate both ethnological aspects such as cryptozoology and psychological inquiries into why these narratives exist. If we consider whether the presence of common features is always linked to creation of visions, we must examine both sociocultural and psychodynamic perspectives. These features might not always manifest when such visions are absent, indicating that while there is a strong correlation, it may not be absolute. However, as suggested by the complexity behind the need for further investigation, Gilmore concludes that inquiry is essential to fully understand the nuances of this relationship. Shared fears and fantasies alike serve as a means for humanity to confront the unknown and articulate social unrests. Monsters, to Gilmore, are not merely imaginary creatures. Sorry, I lost where I was. I'll just start this next paragraph. Okay. Shared fears and fantasies alike serve as a means for humanity to confront the unknown and articulate social unrests. Monsters, to Gilmore, are not merely imaginary creatures, but vile constructs that reveal deeper truths about human nature and cultural values. By integrating multifaceted insights from cryptozoology and psychological inquiry, Gilmore finds the significance of monsters and their ability to unify and diversify the human experience, providing a framework for understanding the collective psyche. Thus, the consistent emergence of monsters in human nature coincides with their role as essential symbols that are used to navigate the complexities of existence and the human condition itself. Okay, that is actually all I have for you guys tonight. I will make another ASMR video soon. I promise. Thank you for being here, and I hope you sleep very, very, very